I really enjoyed the book. It's Claudia Gray, so it's going to be very good. Um, I I really enjoyed how this book is very compact. The story all takes place in one main location. It's called the Amaxine. It's an Amaxine station, and there is similar to A Test of Courage. It follows a lot of characters, or it's more character specific, I should say, versus Light of the Jedi, which is more broad and features a ton of characters and set it up the whole world. This is very character focused. It still has more characters than A Test of Courage does. So if you're looking for something that might be a little bit of a step up reader level wise versus A Test of Courage, maybe not as huge and bombastic as Light of the Jedi, this is the perfect book for you. This is a young adult book, but it doesn't really have the typical young adult type stuff. It's not about a romance or anything like that. It's about Jedi going to the station with a group of smuggler type people, the Bind Guild, led by a Matthew McConaughey a captain named Leox Jossi and his assistant Affie Hollow. It features the Jedi Wraith Silas, Master Comac, Orla, what's her name? Orla Jareni, and Des Ryden, and they experience the Great Disaster and get forced onto this station. It's kind of a place of darkness and it's very mysterious, and they're trying to figure out what's happening. I would highly recommend this book. It's not, I would say it's not my favorite Claudia Gray book by any means, but it is very good. And I think if you're interested in the High Republic era, you're wanting to consume everything High Republic right now, this is definitely a must read. It ends off the first wave of books before the summer books that we'll get. I think it's a great conclusion. It left me on the edge of my seat, waiting to see what happens this summer. And overall, yeah, I think I would really recommend this book for anybody is even if you didn't read the other stuff. It's a good starting out point. It helps to have read the other stuff because you'll know some of the characters, but our main characters have not been featured in any of the other books. So if you're just getting into it, want to jump on something new, this is a great starting point.
Yeah, I want to second all those things. Unlike Liam, I didn't get a chance to fully finish the book in time for a recording, but again, like anything from Claudia Gray, Into the Dark is a supreme Star Wars novel. Um, I will say that as opposed to her other works, where she's kind of been tasked with adapting characters into different stories, filling in their background, things that have happened and change them into the versions that we see in film and in the TV shows. Uh, the High Republic, obviously, we're not most likely going to see these characters ever in anything as big as a live action show, which would be cool. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think that's what the main purpose behind the publishing initiative is. But uh, these are all fully original characters, and while I found them all really, really interesting, and it was a great story to read, it did feel like the thing that I was missing the most from her book is that extra step that she takes of like understanding of the characters, like the things that you all sort of kind of knew based on seeing them on screen, but didn't necessarily get full confirmation of, or like things like in Master and Apprentice, where the tension of Obi-Wan and Anakin's, that's not sorry, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's relationship as Master and Apprentice, um, bloodlines with why Leia is the leader of the Resistance as opposed to being a member of the New Republic. And then I haven't read Princess of Alderaan, but again, that's another Leia book, and the way she writes Leia, I don't think anyone has ever written Leia that way before. Um, Obviously, Lost Stars, she had the benefit of it being, like a smaller romantic story set amongst the Galactic Empire's war with the Rebel Alliance, with, scenes and events from movies that we've seen. But the High Republic uh, is just starting, so there's also some of that limitation as well. And that Nile aren't as big of a force in this book as they are in Test of Courage and Test of Courage and The Light of the Jedi, which I found a little surprising, but I think it works pretty well story wise.
It's definitely much smaller in terms of scale. The you wonder, just like a test of courage, you kind of wonder if the events of this book will really carry over into the future of the High Republic versus just the characters' journeys, which is completely fine because characters' journeys are very good in this, and I really did like all of the characters. Um, Silas is obviously a standout. He is the lead, but I hesitate to say he's really the main protagonist because he is one of an ensemble, and I was surprised by that. I thought it was going to be more focused on him. Because most young adult books are usually focused on one or two people. This is definitely an ensemble cast, and he is the lead, but not by much. Um, and the other character I found to really stand out was Master Comac. He's a Jedi Master who has experienced a lot of traumatic things in his journey as a Jedi, and he's constantly questioning the Order, questioning how they deal with trauma and how they deal with loss and what Jedi should be allowed to feel. I thought that was really interesting, especially coming from a character that was so high up in the ranks of the Jedi. And we haven't really seen that in other High Republic books. We saw Imri go to the dark side for a little while in the Test of Courage, but we haven't really seen adult Jedi questioning the Order like this. And so I thought he was one of the most interesting characters, and I'm really interested to see where his relationship with Reith goes in the future.
Totally agree on that point. Um, those flashback scenes that she put in, um, correct me if I'm wrong, but she does this in every single one of her uh, adapted character stories, right? Like she does this in Master and Apprentice with Qui-Gon and his background. Does she do it in Bloodlines too? I don't think she does.
Can't
Um,
remember. I don't remember if it's in Bloodlines or in Leia.
yeah. But I know at least in her last two Star Wars novels, she's been doing this and Master and Apprentice, and you see Comac's origin, and obviously you see his fellow at that time Padawan, but also now like Jedi Knight Orla Jareni, who visually, if you've seen the artwork for her, is really cool. She's kind of got like the Darth Ray, double-sided saber that opens up. But obviously she's a Jedi and she has white blades, which is again always cool, especially after seeing them with Ahsoka. Um, and their backstory, I mean, I wouldn't say it's necessarily anything too crazy from what we've seen in other Star Wars stories. I feel like we've definitely seen things that have been way more chaotic, way more disturbing, but we haven't necessarily seen characters carry that weight, carry that burden of loss and struggle. Um, I mean, almost instantly, like Comax, I don't want to say his personality changes, but all these doubts that he's probably had like hidden away or maybe never even considered as more than just like a quirk of his suddenly just overwhelms him from that moment on. And then he's forced to continue and carry uh, on their mission, even though they were just shot down and he lost his master, right? Like, and then seeing how Orla's master reacts, like, yeah, master is also doing the right thing and like guiding the two Padawans, still trying to do their mission, but she also has like doubts about like her master and strange because now I've never seen like two Jedi who felt a lot of issues with the Jedi Order carry that for so long and then to still be sympathetic to each other now in the current time and even more attuned to those feelings, which I would think would go away with time, but neither of those characters have really done anything to improve that situation. Um, but yeah, I mean, great characters from there, and they definitely round out like a very strong ensemble. I mean, yeah, I guess you can say there's Dez as like the Jedi that unfortunately like the least interesting. Um, and that's not to say he isn't a decent character. Really serves the purpose of the story well, and has some pretty interesting things happen to him, some twists and stuff. But he out of the three Jedi that we follow, four, sorry, he is the one that's like, like all right, doesn't. It seems more like he's just in it for pushing the plot forward. And we've seen other uh, Padawans with their master's former Padawan, like their relationship. Obviously, we've seen Qui-Gon with what's his name again? Count Dooku's first Padawan. Uh, Totally blanking. Yeah,
I can't remember either.
Rail
Um,
Averos. Rail Averos. Yeah, that's
yeah,
who it is.
Rail.
Um, but after seeing his dynamic with Dooku and his dynamic with Qui-Gon, Dez's dynamic with Reith is kind of underwhelming. Um, but again, I also haven't finished the whole book, so maybe Liam knows a bit more. But uh, yeah, it is an ensemble cast, which is new for her, but maybe that's why I don't feel like it's as deep or rich with its character digs, I guess personality or thought process digs that she kind of does. But I don't know. I still think it's because maybe she does better with adapted characters than she does with original characters.
It's funny you mentioned Rael Aberoth because when Des was introduced, that's exactly the character I was thinking of, and I was thinking, okay, we're gonna get this same type of relationship where Reith is he's a hesitant Jedi. He doesn't want to go out and be adventurous. He just wants to stay in the archives and study, and he wants to learn. He likes to observe and take notes. He doesn't want to participate. Versus Des, who is the one who's been volunteering to go to the frontier, who's the exciting, well-respected warrior. And I was thinking, okay, here we go. We're going to kind of repeat the same plot line, and that doesn't really happen. And I would kind of agree that yes, Des is kind of the least interesting of the four Jedi. He disappears for a large portion of this book, um, and so he kind of he gets left on the wayside. And but he does have an arc. He changes by the end. Um, if you haven't noticed already, we're talking spoilers in this book. So he takes the bearish vow at the end of the book, which is where he'll go off and just commit himself to studying the Force like a monk, basically, for the rest of his life. He won't be going on these adventures. So he does have a bit of an arc where he changes completely from the type of character that he was at the beginning. Still, yes, it was the most underwhelming of the arcs because he's the character you get to spend least time with of the three Jedi. That's at the end of the book too. Master Comac is paired with Reith to be his master. I think that's going to be a really interesting pairing moving forward because Comac is the Jedi Master who's questioning the Order versus the Padawan who is so engrossed in it and is so committed and fully believes in everything they're doing. He has some doubts as he goes through this journey, but never doubts the Order. He more doubts himself and the way he should handle situations. I think it's going to be more of a Qui-Gon Obi-Wan relationship that they're setting up here. Someone who's more headstrong or willing to think for himself or believe his own ideas versus another character who wants to follow the rules and follow exactly what he thinks a Jedi is supposed to do versus what he personally thinks is right. But that is the majority of our main Jedi in
Yeah,
this book. They're all very good characters in their own right. I'm not sure if we're going to see Orla again. She does leave at the end to become a wayfinder, and she talks about it throughout most of the book. She wants to become a wayfinder instead of committing herself to the Order. But we do have three other main characters who are part of the Bind Guild. And the lead of that group is Affie Hollow. I would say, just as Reith is the lead of the Jedi group, Affie is the lead of the Bind Guild group. She's kind of your typical young adult character. I think she's 17. She's discovering new things about who she's working for, and they might not be as good of people as she thought they were going to be. And so she has kind of this journey of discovery. Personally, I found her to be a good, nice character, but not really somebody I cared if we followed it ever again. She doesn't have too much of an arc. Her arc is kind of she didn't she believed wholeheartedly in what she was doing before and who she was working for, and then by the end she is willing to give up on that because of her morals and her convictions and to do what's right. Um, so it's kind of a traditional Star Wars journey of doing right and wrong versus um, doing what's beneficial to yourself. But relationship with the other two guild characters is really what makes her um, such a fun character. Leox Jossie, as we said, is like Matthew McConaughey in space. He's a fun hippie kind of character, the captain of the ship, and then one of the standout characters of the whole book is Geode. He's this giant rock guy who's the navigator on the vessel. He never says anything, but he's described as a partier, and he's described as compassionate. And Claudia Gray does some of her funniest writing that she's ever done in Star Wars when she talks about a character looking over at Geode, and Geode gives him a disapproving look or something like that. Or Geode's silence confirms their worst fears. She'll have sentences like that genuinely made me laugh.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess adding on to what you're saying, yeah, Affy, her arc is solid, but it's more of like the classic young adult story, like you mentioned, Liam, like learning about things that change your whole viewpoint and how do you adapt to that? What does that make you into? Like, what is that process of growing up and becoming an adult kind of like? Um, but as we spent a lot of time with her, it's not like I don't like her character. It's just that the other two in the dynamic are leagues above her, unfortunately for her. For us, that's great because Leox Gyasi, I mean, he's 90s Matthew McConaughey, just ripped off screen, put onto print. If any of you have seen Dazed and Confused, it is quite literally his character in that film. Just imagine this guy saying, "All right, all right, all right." Like this man goes, he's a he's a character. He's fun. He enjoys a spice stick, which is equivalent for some things that people like to partake in. Um,
Not quite as bad as a death stick, though.
no, it's no death stick. And I don't think anyone would be telling him to reconsider his whole life. But uh, he's got a charm to him. Like he like another thing we should really mention is that the Bind Guild also one of their ships is the Legacy Run, and that's the ship that kind of sets off all of the stuff that happens with the emergencies and everything in Light of the Jedi. Um, and the one thing about the Bind Guild is like they keep everything in order. Like all the ships are in tip top, even if they're not even necessarily like the best vessels for their time. They can run way longer because of the maintenance that they do, and their crew is orderly. Like Affy is very orderly. Like she's got a clean uniform on. She might have a bit of a character to her, but she is still capable of running a very nice ship. And Leox is just shirtless Matthew McConaughey with like multicolored beads and everything, and he refuses to button up his shirt. And his reasoning is pure Matthew McConaughey. Like there's just different things about his character. Like he's like, you know what? I don't enjoy sex because I think of myself as the fulfillment of my lineage of all the ancestors that have come before me, and now I am the final piece until my sister starts having kids, and then we continue this process. Um, yeah, I mean, and then he's like, he has an explanation for why he doesn't button up his shirt, and it's just like, okay, only Matthew McConaughey would get away with something like that. Um, But I'd say, as great as he is, Geode, man, Geode is the star character of this trio. I mean, Liam, you described him as a rock man, but he's not even a rock man. He's just a rock. I don't think there's any description of like eyeline or mouths or hands or anything. It's just a rock, right? Like there's a scene where Affy, after finding out more about uh just the buying guild, as she's like in this process of like figure out like the harsh realities of the business that she's a part of. She doesn't want to talk to Leox about it, but then she cries on the kind and loving surface, I guess, of Geode. Again, very, like you said, very funny dialogue. Even if some of it is unintentional, because uh so it's so strange. And this guy apparently is like the biggest partier, right? Like you could see him on a club every night, and then he's back to business doing the best navigation out there. Um, I particularly like that there's like a little mini story where Leox is like recounting how they last time that they moved like these statues, right, was for like when these creatures on this planet were kind of controlled by this Rhodian client of theirs, and then they started like doing all these inscriptions on walls of Geode and Leox as like their gods and stuff. And I mean, it's just such a strange, like hilarious story, but it's just like, yeah, yeah. The more you read about these characters, the more you're like, okay, this is totally in line with something I could see happening to them. They don't have the force, but man, they have the craziest adventures.
Yeah, I absolutely want to see the Leox and Geode adventure stories, like in the vein of the old Han Solo adventures and Land of Calrissian adventures, like that type of thing. Or even like these are the High Republic Han and Chewie, like that. That is hilarious. Geode, Claudia Gray, honestly, like she kills it in some some of this book. Like it's so funny. She does such a great job using Geode. Initially, when they introduced Geode, I was kind of rolling my eyes. I thought, oh, okay, this doesn't feel like Star Wars. And then it was very funny. Um, the last thing I want to bring up with Into the Dark before we move on to the comics is one of the main villain groups, which the Drengir in the book, and they're these ant-like creatures that are almost that are kind of imbued with the dark side, but it doesn't don't give any indication that they can actually use the force or anything. They're just very in tuned with the dark side. And I thought that was kind of a fascinating villain for Star Wars. Like we've never really seen anything like that. I couldn't really picture them in my head. I was trying to picture, are they more like a swamp thing where they're more man looking, but they're made of plant and they can morph because they're pretty much unkillable. They cut them in half, they regrow back together, and they kind of this ancient species that wants to take over the galaxy, and they're going to use the Amaxian station to do it. And I thought they were kind of a fascinating villain. I'm not sure if they're ever going to come back, or if they're just going to be referenced, and then maybe in some type of old Republic stuff we'll get reference to them, or maybe 200-300 years prior to High Republic we'll get some type of story for them. But they were a really fascinating villain.
Totally agree. I also want to mention that, as you were saying, the Nile are very minimal in this story, but they're minimal as we have been introduced to them. I would say that when we read Test of Courage, we just got goons. That's how they're characterized, as like two goons that are here to cause a scene, make a mess, clean up duty, essentially. Light of the Jedi, obviously, Ma Shinro, and all those things that we see from the Legacy Run falling apart and all that. Like, they're villainous, but they're different. They're varied. Some of them are crazy into like the equivalent of like heavy metal for Star Wars. Some of them are very orderly. Some are very rich. Like, and just like the whole class structure is very very strange as compared to other things that we've seen in Star Wars. But two of the characters that we follow in this book are Nan. Or is it Nan or Nan? Or and uh, is it Huey or I want to say it's Huey.
I think it's Haig. I don't know how to say
Hey,
if you say Nan or Non. I don't know what you
yeah.
say it.
So I'm gonna go with Nan and Hog, right? And like these two characters, you think it's like this old character who's just kind of like caring for this young woman who's very petite and small. Um, and when I was reading it, I was like, okay, like they're just some random group stuck out here that they have to all come at this Amaxian space station. Which again, as a side note, that was first we've actually seen this before. If you read the Kylo Ren mini comic series, it's featured in there. It's where Snoke stays when he first meets Ben. But in the High Republic era, um, we have Nan and uh, Hog, right? As all these other ships, including the Jedi's, are forced to come to the station. You were thinking, okay, like, are these are just two people who need help, right? Incapable of hurting anyone. But as it's revealed, they're Nile, which is very interesting because I don't think we've ever seen Nile kind of be so secretive. We've seen in Test of Courage that the characters kind of remove all their piercings and everything and try to blend in, but you know, the cynical part of me was like, I just don't want them to be bad people, right? There's like a lot of like no hints of like how the older Jedi are like, oh, Reed's being a little too friendly with Nan. Like it might look like he's flirting back, and the dude does not pick up on his own behavior, which again falls in line with Jedi being so disconnected with other people in the galaxy emotionally. But then to finally hear that they're the Nile, and again, I don't know how the story ends, but to hear that they're the Nile, it just it's like I felt bad. I was like, I wanted some sort of idealistic, like, oh, the Jedi really helped someone and they'll reunite one day, but nope, they're reuniting because she's a villain and he's a villain, and they're probably very, very much capable of causing havoc, just like all the other Nile that we've seen.
Yeah, they were an interesting group, especially because they are lower level in the Nile hierarchy. Really, the only Nile we've gotten to see and gotten to know are the Tempest Runners and Marchion Ro as the Eye. So it was interesting to see how they interact and how they will try to blend into their surroundings in order to gain an advantage on their enemies. Um, yeah, overall, final thoughts on this book. I would highly recommend it, especially if you want to get into the High Republic. I think the nice thing about the three High Republic books so far is they all give you a very different side of the High Republic because we can't really think of it as this one very specific type of event. It's a huge galaxy, and we're talking about the frontier and the Wild West of the Jedi and the Republic going to the Outer Rim and establishing, and it's a part of their and really expanding at the time. So it is very justifiable to give three broad different stories that all are brought on by the same great disaster. So I would say I highly recommend this one. I think Light of the Jedi is my favorite of the three. This would be my second. Then A Test of Courage is third, which really isn't a knock on Test of Courage because it is a really, really good or junior novel, they call it. It's a very good junior novel. It's a quick read. If you're just looking to dip your foot into the world, that's a good one. But I would say this is a better book, and it's Claudia Gray, so it's going to be worth your time regardless.
Yep, just adding on to that. Really loved what I've read so far of Into the Dark. I am almost done with it, but not quite there. So I can't give like a total final statement on it. I will say that I like it just a bit more than Light of the Jedi for myself, but that's also because I really like interconnected stories. And Light of the Jedi is really grand, but that grandness also does mean that the scale of the story is kind of separated out into different groups. And that's not a knock on the story. It works really well to set up the whole galaxy at the time, the Jedi, the whole disaster, the Great Disaster, and all that. I personally just found Into the Dark with all the characters in the same setting all the different factions kind of working for and against each other, all the twists and turns, just the mystery of it. That's what I liked a lot. So that's why I have it currently a little ranked higher. Obviously, my thoughts could change once this is over. Um, once I finish my read, but like Liam also said, Test of Courage is still a great book and very important to read, especially because the main character there, Vanessa Rowe, uh, is going to be playing a part in the comics that we're going to discuss right after and a future book. And she herself has also picked up a Padawan, just like Rita's now become Padawan to Jedi Master Coma Avitas. So maybe there's some crossover there. Maybe there's some dynamic.
Thanks so much for watching this segment of the Star Wars Lads podcast. If you enjoyed this content, please like the video by clicking the thumbs up button down below and subscribe to our channel for new Star Wars content every single week. If you want to watch our full discussion, click the video on the left. Or if you want to check out one of our other awesome videos, click the video on the right.